Hello, friends. This is William Samuel at Woodsong in Alabama, sending you greetings. I begin by telling you that your letters and your support and your words of encouragement are very much appreciated. For that matter, even the criticism, the constructive criticism, is appreciated too. Especially useful to us are your insights, however they've come, your confirmations, and your illustrations that might indicate that we here at Woodsong are being helpful, if no more than to stir you up, which is what the conversation that follows is quite likely to do. Years ago, I discovered a new way to look at the world, a new way to think, a new position from which I could view the universe, and that position let me see beauty and wonders that were not apparent to the old way, to the old position, to the old thing. Well, now, this new way to think and this way to view the world seemed wonderful and marvelous to me. At the time it happened, I was absolutely certain it was virgin and pristine and that it had never before been seen by anyone. I've since learned that this experience is awaiting everyone, and it will for each come as it did with me, with the absolute conviction that it's unique and new. In any event, shortly after that experience, I was carried away to a war, my second time to go to war, wherein every aspect of this new vision, this new position, the new way to think, was put to an awful test, an awesome test, which at the time, I might say, seemed entirely unjust and undeserved. I wondered, well, how could I, on the one hand, be granted insight so marvelous that all things were new? In even the view of warfare in Donnybrooks between nations and individuals were seen to be not as they appeared. How could that be true? And then I am immediately, on the other hand, subjected to every humanly horrible indignity and deprivation that warfare at an infantryman's level can subject one to. Well, I'll not bother you with war stories right now. I save those to shock the folks who make pilgrimages here to Woodsong. And right now, I'll not try to explain why these dualistic dichotomies of extremes in human existence, like warfare between nations, like battles between life and death, and so forth, are for all of us primary teachers. But I do want to say here, and the reason I've mentioned it all, is that that experience as an infantry soldier in two wars, one before the light and one following the light, to use that term, in which it was tested, I came to understand the basis of fear and what fear is all about. And so I want to address that subject in this talk, among other things. Before I do, let me tell you that this tape is, and this tangible tape that you're listening to right now, is here, possible because of two gentle people who are publishing the tidings of Woodsong with me. One sent the money that allowed the purchase of the cassettes and the tapes and the labels and the stamps all in one big swoop. The other, visiting here at Woodsong a few weeks ago when Rachel and I were knocking out the tapes one at a time for the seminars, to send those who had attended the seminars. He watched all of this going on and he said, "Bill, I've been wanting to help you spread these ideas, and watching you make those tapes so slowly gives me an idea." Well, a few days later, friend John called from New York to tell me that a copying machine was on its way, and now, instead of one at a time, Rachel and I can make tapes several at a time. And this is how living the truth, publishing the glad tidings upon the mountain goes and has gone for me ever since those days long ago when I walked away from the end of the war and the end of my time in a business world and away from organization to sing this song that has no name, the song of God alone, God only, God all in all. Now, those who helped me during the years, and those that are helping now, are indeed publishing with me. Everyone, you see, can't write. Everyone doesn't have the whatever to send tapes out, but here I am, and the instrument of so many who are helping. And how beautiful upon the mountains, as it's put by Isaiah, are the feet of him who bringeth glad tidings and who publishes peace. Peace, not as the world understands peace to be, but the deep peace, the equanimity that comprehends things as they are, not as they seem. So John and Laurel, a whole bunch of us, thank you very much. We have all grown unconsciously accustomed to listening to talks or reading articles, expecting them to make sense. There is no satisfying us intellectually if what we read and what we listen to doesn't make sense. As a matter of fact, to the intellectual nature of us, it seems absolutely ludicrous if a statement is made that doesn't make sense, that isn't reasonable and logical. I doubt if there is anyone within the range of these words right now who isn't listening, expecting it to make sense, to be reasonable and logical, hoping vigorously that it will make sense, and that it will be reasonable and logical, and therefore, quote, understood, unquote, as if understanding is limited to reason and logic and making sense. I assure you that infinity, infinite wisdom, omniscience is not limited to making sense. It transcends intellectualism's reason and logic and making sense. So therefore, this does not mean that it excludes reason and logic and making sense. It can include it as well as transcend it. In much the same manner that the sphere transcends plane and line and point, but while including them at the same time. How was that, David? There is much fear abroad in the land. Books have been written about fear and how to overcome it. Fear seems to be a problem to everyone. There are no fearless people. Well, after all of these years that I've spent wrestling with one sense of fear after another, I finally learned, that fear is not something that can be put off nor put away. It isn't something that one is healed of. Rather, fear, like a shadow, is something to be understood. And then when it's finally understood, the sting goes out of it. Mortal mind is fear itself. That is, the sense of an identification as a mortal man, or as an entity separate and apart from all, and from all other people and things, is not just the root of fear, or the cause of fear, but is all there is to fear itself. Fear is the feeling that the personal identity is somehow threatened. Well, the personal identity is threatened because it isn't real. What's it threatened by? Well, it's threatened by the truth, which speaks of another identity, the one identity, the God identity. The personal sense of a selfhood, apart from God, is threatened by the knowledge that there is no such selfhood. It's much the same as the former belief of a flat earth. That belief of a flat earth was threatened the very moment it arose. By what? By what? By the knowledge of a round earth, by the fact of a round earth. And yet, you see, it was only a belief which was first threatened and finally deprived of power by the truth, or the non-belief, of a round earth. Now, truth doesn't end belief, but it takes the power from it. The shadow and the shadow's validity doesn't end when we find the tree itself which casts the shadow. But our attention suddenly is tree, not shadow. Where before we gave the shadow great power and importance and much attention, in fact all of our attention, when the tree is discovered, the tree is given attention and the shadow is understood. And all of the former notions of the shadow's validity and power and importance are gone out of the shadow. And the shadow is there, fully understood, and then seen to be the means by which the tree was discovered. Then we see that fear and its ally anguish are the means by which fearlessness is finally discovered. The shadow, you see, leads straight away to the tree. The power given the belief of an ego identity, an ego, the power given it, is removed upon the recognition of the truth which reveals that God is the only identity in all the universe. And that this life, this very self-same awareness, right now, presently, hopefully, considering these words, is the life divine, the awareness of God. Identity, then, is God's self-comprehension. And the personal sense of identity, the me sense, is the shadow, the antipode, the nadir, the inverted image of the real identity. In all ways, the personal sense, the me sense, mimics God in reverse, diametrically opposing, exactly as a shadow mimics the tree. In all ways reversed, diametrically opposing. The right edge of the shadow is the left edge of the tree, and the right edge of the shadow is the left edge of the tree, if I got that straight. And the shadow is born each morning and dies each evening while the tree stands there still, resolute, strong. The one who searches for the correct identity, believing himself to be incorrectly identified, will never live outside the boundary of fear. For such a struggling, striving sense, to find the genuine identity is fear itself. Mortal mind can never explain itself away, nor does it want to. We take God to be the warp and woof of identity, to be the all in all of this very awareness, listening to these words. Now this doesn't end the belief of a mortal identification, a mortal selfhood, but it removes the attention given it. It removes the sting and the power of believing that it's all important. Then, asserting God to be all, and this life, right here, right now, to be God's self-awareness happening, we look round about and behold wonder and beauty of a solipsistic, holistic oneness everywhere. Well, how do I know this is so? Because I live it so, I observe it so, I feel it so, I be it so, and it is so. Well now, does all of this end the belief and dream of mortality, the belief and dream of material existing? Well, it does not. But the power of the belief is ended. Everything is seen for the grand purpose it serves, even the belief and dream. Belief to make the truth plain upon the tables, dreams, leading straight away to dreamlessness, just exactly as the shadow leads straight away to the tree. One can follow the sun by turning his beach chair from east to west during time's daylight hours. That's one of his choices. Or he can be the sun, which precludes the necessity for turning the chair every few minutes. But of these two ways to do it, being the sun, being light itself, clearly understands why the tangible form and all tangibility must turn its chairs during the daylight watch. Identity doesn't end tangibilities, seasons, and cycles. Those cycles unfold within the sun's light, and because the sun is, light knows more than any viewpoint looking at light could ever hope to know. But the process of looking at light doesn't end when one takes identity to be light. There are a lot of folks who think that metaphysics, truth, is here to make a human life more pleasant. Well, they're mistaken. You've heard these words before. My peace give I unto thee. Great statement. But he makes clear, Jesus made clear, that his peace was not the sort of peace that the world knows about. He said it's a peace beyond understanding. If one thinks that the Christ life, or the identification as light itself, is supposed to present a continuous picture of human joy and human happiness, he's mistaken, and need only consider these words. Listen to these words from the Bible. Jesus groaned in the Spirit and was troubled. Well, if living the Christ life is supposed to be a life forever free of anguish, how is it that one reads of the light that Jesus represents? Groaning in the Spirit and being troubled. And then just a few verses over, Jesus wept. And then a few more verses over, Jesus therefore again groaning in himself cometh to the grave of his friend Lazarus. Well, if the pursuit of Christ's truth is supposed to produce a world free from anguish, then why did Jesus say to his disciples who had been with him for a very long time, he said, verily I say unto you that ye shall weep and lament. Ye shall be sorrowful. Yes, he said that. But he said, your sorrow will be turned into joy. How is it that he could tell a group of people studying with him that even after all of their study, they were still to suffer the travail of childbirth in the process of giving birth to their own sense of truth? Now consider these words. These things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation. Take my yoke upon yourself, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. And ye shall find rest unto your souls. And then a little bit later are the words that Jesus is at the garden, and he makes this remark to his disciples. He says, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And then a few verses further, Jesus asks for what the metaphysician would call a demonstration. And by the way, he didn't get it. He said, oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. I've experienced a spate of passings on during the past year, all of them dedicated metaphysicians, each one of them troubled in ways that all are troubled in the presence of years, the parting of old friends, the approach of the grave. I think the point I'd like to make here is that as appearances go, metaphysicians don't face death any better, not a bit better, than our old country religionists down here in Alabama. Oh, now, metaphysics allows one to make it through the young years and the mid-years better because there isn't a body consciousness, not so much of an ego concern. But when the chips are down and the prospect of a physical end, a tangibility's end, the metaphysician, I find, isn't any more certain of painless, effortless transition than anyone else. Well, consider the paranoia of Mrs. Eddy's last years. One wonders, at least I've wondered, if her frequent declarations of eternal life were spoken out of strength or out of weakness. She wrote on her last day of tangibility, God is my life, but who is this me who says my, and why was there still a sense of me in one supposedly so absolute? Well, I can answer that. The me sense doesn't die. The me sense hangs around just like the shadow of a tree. When the tree is found, its shadow doesn't vaporize. But when the tree is sighted and attention is riveted there, it isn't on the shadow. And so, as appearances go, those who attain years in their study of truth and metaphysics, and difficulty with those years is often the case for the elderly, there is ever less concern with the esoteric stances of absolutism, with the profundities of metaphysics. There's less and less a concern with that, and a return to the basic simplicities, which are, incidentally, no more present in metaphysics than in the most rustic, primitive, backwoods, fundamentalist religion of Alabama. The old country preacher is as certain of the presence of God as the most dedicated metaphysician. But there's a difference. There's a big difference that's significant. As the preacher's sight grows dim, he doesn't condemn himself for not having enough faith in God. As what seems his tangible hearing clouds, and words are more and more indistinguishable, he doesn't think he's failed